Greetings, everybody. I'm Larry Williams, Director of CARMA, the Consortium for the Advancement of Research Methods and Analysis, and it is February 7th, 2023, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to another version of our CARMA Quick Chat, where we take the opportunity to connect with leading research methods scholars about various things that are going on in their careers and their research activity. And today it's a special honor to welcome one of our upcoming CARMA Webcast presenters, Dr. Jane Lee. Jane is a professor of strategic management at WHU in the Otto Biesheim School of Management. She received her PhD at Aston, was on the faculty at the University of Sydney, and is now in her current position at Otto Biesheim. So Jane, welcome. And we're chatting to Jane is sort of the preview for her upcoming CARMA webcast, which is on March 24th, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. So Jane, here you are, it's 2023, you're a business faculty member. How did you get there?
Well, it's been a journey. So I started off always having an interest in people, right? So I started studying psychology, and over time that kind of moved closer and closer to business. So really being interested in the human dynamics that underpin business. So as I moved through my education, I started from kind of pure psychology, then I went to occupational psychology, then I went to management, and then I went to strategy. So it was this kind of evolving process, but at the same time always focused on having humans and human dynamics at the heart of everything I do.
And along the way, you had interest that developed and you've pursued them and been very successful in qualitative research methods. What were the forces that kind of led you or pulled you or pushed you in that direction?
Yeah, I would say it started with interest and it kind of took a life on of its own. So during my PhD, I had designed a very ambitious study, which any advisor in the room will now laugh at when I say that I wanted to start with a pilot study of having 100 interviews for a military sample and 100 interviews in a civilian sample, do a comparison, and from that then do a questionnaire, 1,000 in each. And so as I'm telling the story, you already realized this is way too much for one PhD. What are you doing? And my supervisor realized that too. So as I had finished the first part of my study, which was 120 qualitative interviews, he basically said to me, like, Jane, that's it. You're done collecting data. And at the time, my shock and my horror, I said, no, I mean, this is career suicide. I can't possibly be working with qualitative data. Like, this is my like pre-sample. This is me just laying a foundation for the real scientific work I'm going to be doing. Mm-hmm. But then as I started to work with the data and really, really understood it for, the contribution it could make, the richness, the learning, and just the meaningful contribution that I could see in the data, I started to fall in love with qualitative methods. And, we're talking, 20 years ago now. So back then it wasn't like you would just take a qualitative research methods course and get some tools to use. I mean, it was all very much self-taught and a little bit serendipitous, if you will. And so I worked so hard in the process and learned so much in the process that I really started to enjoy not just doing empirical work, but also really developing a love for the method and methods development. And that's how I kind of ended up with this two-pronged career. Mm-hmm. So I was combining empirical work with methodological improvements, and kind of those things always going hand in hand for me.
Yeah, well, it's a type of career that I understand, and you've obviously been very successful with it. So as I was reviewing the various publications and the topic areas that you work in, and also the fact that you are so heavily involved in professional management education, I found myself having a question that I hadn't really thought about before, which is the effect of one's research orientation has, whether it's quantitative or qualitative, whether that influences our approach to teaching. So do you think are there ways in which your qualitative research approach influences your teaching?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's a bit of a chicken egg problem in that I don't know which came first. So I might have always done this anyways, but I think that the two things that I do a little bit differently or maybe put more focus on. So maybe everybody does this, but I really emphasize this in my courses is kind of the importance of context, so I teach strategy, and obviously, we have all these tools that allow us to do analysis, and I really always push students to pay attention to the nuances of context and how important they are in influencing how we understand and respond to that environment. And so I think this is something I've really learned from working with qualitative data, that the devil is in the detail, and two cases could look so similar, and just a few small changes could really shift the entire trajectory of an organization, of the people in that organization. And so I think that that's one of my things, really like a focus to the particular, the context, the specificity. And I think the second thing that it has given me is a real curiosity for engaging with broad ranges of cases. So, I'm not someone who teaches the regular, Harvard Business School cases or the Stanford cases. I always develop my own cases, and they're always quirky, like that local Australian charity, or that, if I look at Shell, I'm not looking at Shell, I'm looking at, Shell in Nigeria, or, I always try and find a way to make the cases just a little bit more difficult and hopefully interesting, so that students have the opportunity to engage with the richest cases that they can. So I think this is probably arising out of my appreciation for context that was, really gained from qualitative interpretive research.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was thinking, and I'm thank you for sharing that. Another question that I had concerning the kind of the differences between qualitative research methods and quantitative research methods is how advancements in those methods occur. And as somebody on the quantitative side of things, we have, at least in terms of my own career, there's some randomness to it, but it's sort of systematic, that you have an interest and you explore it under different conditions, and the progression evolves. And when you do that, it's sort of clearer as to what that advancement is. But I'm not familiar, I don't have enough knowledge on the qualitative side, and you participate in it as an author as well as an editor, being an associate editor for ORM. So do advancements occur in the same way on the qualitative side in terms of the methods?
Yeah, as a strategist, my answer will always be, it depends. So I think in general, yes. So I would say in general, it's relatively incremental. We have traditions that we kind of pay attention to and that we build on. And so I do think we have this kind of, these boundaries that the community sets up for us, and radical innovation is less likely than incremental kind of adjustment of methods. So I think in that sense, that's true. If you think about that recent debate in the Journal of Management Inquiry that Danny Jayoa kicked off, around, kind of, how far we can go from the norm and what is accepted and not accepted. I think that's a reminder, that the community is kind of a strong stakeholder and can influence how creative we can be. And so I think in general, we are also cautious, but I also would say that because qualitative work has a little bit more multiplicity, in the sense that we don't have just one clear tradition, right? We have post-positivism, we have interpretivism, we have, critical studies, and within that, there's so much richness. that I do think what it gives us, or at least some of us, is a kind of broad-mindedness, an open-mindedness to different approaches, to the point that I actually, as an editor, would say, if we talk about a method that's maybe a little less well known, I accept that method because there's a community and attrition behind that method. And I don't have a right to reject that method in a sense, so that I can appreciate various different approaches and tools. But maybe I'm also a little bit unusual there because, having been born a hardcore positivist and then having seen the light pathway through my career, maybe I'm also a little bit unique in that perspective. But I think that in general, the default is incremental, but we are allowing for some transformation. And I think this is more difficult in quantitative work where you have a little bit more of a structured framework to follow, right?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, you are an associate editor at ORM. And so how's that been for you? And what have been the particular challenges that you've enjoyed the most or like the least?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, obviously I have to acknowledge the co-editors in chief who are absolutely amazing. So I think that it's probably one of the most supportive journals I've been at. So it's a wonderful journal to work with and for. So I really appreciate the kind of community behind that. And so I think this is something I kind of need to caveat because not every journal is going to be like this. So I think some of the opportunities are just exposure to so much different work. So new ideas, quirky submissions, different ways of thinking and presenting around philosophy, methods specifically, ways of conducting methods, tools. So I think it's really enlightening. If you're interested in methods, there's no better way to see what's happening right now in the field and then by editing the journal. And then in terms of challenges, it's just navigating a desire to want to encourage innovative work with the need to ensure that that innovative work produces high quality outputs, right? So this eternal struggle between, like what kinds of innovation are effective and generative and what kind of innovations are maybe not meaningful in the same way. And so for me, it's that. And the second thing I would say is that sometimes in academia, when we write papers, we get very structure oriented and we start to write, an empirical paper or a theoretical paper. We're quite practiced in that. But methodological papers are different. And so what I often find is that the submissions are somehow stuck between an empirical paper and a methodological paper, or between a theoretical paper and a methodological paper. And so I would like to see more engagement with the debate in research methods, contribution to research methods practice in the paper. So that I would say is the second challenge.
Yeah. Well, it's I found it to be one of the most rewarding editorial work, to be one of the most rewarding experiences as an academician. And this point that you're talking about, the ability, I hope that each associate editor kind of has something that they feel strongly about that is a way in which they're going to leave their mark in shaping things. And that sounds like a great focus for you. Well, as I mentioned, we're chatting with you this morning because of your upcoming CARMA Webcast Lecture. That is going to be March 24th. And you should know that it is available live, free and live to all CARMA institutional members. We're excited. We have about 170 universities worldwide that are now institutional members of CARMA. And we also have, as part of our celebration for our 25th year, a special program we call our affiliates program. And so we have 15 professional associations globally for whom we have reached out and made connections, and all of our resources are available free of charge to those members until August 31st. So that's what a CARMA Webcast Lecture is. It goes in the recording. Not only is it available live, but the recording goes into our video library, our on-demand library. We have close to 250 recordings that are there. So Jane, we're very excited, looking forward to your upcoming lecture, The Power of Tools of Qualitative Analysis. Can you tell us, give us a preview of what that's going to be like?
Yeah, so I guess I'll just start by saying that when I teach qualitative methods, my focus is really on trying to be as applied as possible so that I can impart some of the skills of doing qualitative research. And so in this particular webcast, my focus was on specific tools and just introducing some of those tools and showing what they look like in practice. So if I just give you one example, you know, when you read an empirical paper, oftentimes you go to the analysis section and it says, you know, as a first step of analysis, I wrote a thick description of whatever, the case, the stories, participants, you know. But actually, when you talk to people, they don't know what a thick description looks like or how you might write one or use it. So part of what I plan to do, for instance, is to show one of mine. so students and researchers have an idea how they might use it in their own work and the various ways in which you can adapt it to make it a powerful analytical tool. And so I do that with various things. So thick description, rich description, however you might want to call it, is one of them. I also look at critical events. Then I use particular, you know, themes or codes. I talk about the sensitizing construct. I also kind of dive into vignette and composite vignette. And then I also do a little bit on kind of visualization and modeling. And the whole point is just to show qualitative researchers that, you know, the toolkit that you have at hand, or the more tools you have at hand, the more able they make you to really delve into different ways of analyzing and working with the data. So that's my plan in this, you know, short section that I have available to me, just to give a little bit of an insight into what that might look like in the daily work of doing qualitative analysis.
Well, we're very excited to continue in the tradition of having ORM editors and associate editors contributing to CARMA, and we'll be grateful for that. Now, I should also mention that Jane also was one of our CARMA short course instructors. We offer for the upcoming year probably a total of 45 courses beginning in May. And they are targeted for different regions. And so, as it turns out, we have courses in May and June that will be accessible during reasonable hours to the European community. And Jane will be teaching one of her qualitative courses for us during that time. And I should mention also that it should be available where you're watching this, but the CARMA website is karma.ttu.com. So, Jane, thanks so much for sharing your observations and responding to my questions. We very much look forward to your talk in a couple of weeks, and stay safe until then.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.